Welcome to Deep Sleep Physics. I hope you're doing well and that you're ready to find some peace tonight. It's a pleasure to be your guide through the mysteries of the dark. Tonight, the journey moves inward, into the quiet architecture of thought, into the soft electrical storms that shape perception, memory, and emotion. The human mind is never truly silent. Even in stillness, networks of neurons exchange signals in delicate patterns. Tiny electrical impulses traveling across billions of connections, forming experiences that feel continuous and whole, though they are built from microscopic pulses of energy. Every thought begins as chemistry, neurotransmitters crossing narrow synaptic gaps, molecules binding, releasing, fading, creating waves of activity that ripple through neural circuits. These waves do not move randomly. They follow pathways strengthened by repetition, shaped by memory, refined by attention. Perception itself is not a direct window into reality. It is a reconstruction, assembled moment by moment inside the brain. Light enters the eyes. Pressure touches the skin. Sound vibrates through air. But meaning is formed internally, translated into color, texture, and tone by neural interpretation. Even emotion follows pattern and structure. Signals travel from deeper regions of the brain toward higher processing centers, shaping the experience of calm, curiosity, attachment, or reflection. These states are not abstract forces. They are measurable rhythms of activation, synchronized networks adjusting the body to its environment. The mind also carries echoes of the past, memory stored not as static images, but as distributed networks of associations, each recall slightly reshaping the original trace, each remembrance quietly updating itself. Memory is less like a recording and more like a reconstruction. Attention narrows and widens like a lens, sometimes focused sharply on detail, sometimes diffused across environment. When attention softens, mental activity shifts into slower patterns. Brain waves lengthen, becoming more synchronized, preparing the body for rest. Throughout the day, billions of neural exchanges occur without conscious awareness, regulating breathing, coordinating movement, predicting outcomes. The brain operates through layered systems, ancient structures guiding instinct, newer regions refining analysis and language. And beneath it all, there is rhythm. Electrical oscillations rising and falling in steady cycles. Alpha waves, theta waves, slow patterns associated with relaxation and transition toward sleep. The mind naturally moves through these phases, just as the planet moves through day and night. As awareness begins to settle into this understanding, the complexity of the mind feels less overwhelming and more structured, less chaotic and more rhythmic. An intricate biological system guided by physical law, shaped by experience and constantly adapting. Tonight, the exploration of psychology becomes less about effort and more about observation. A quiet drifting through the architecture of thought itself, where perception, memory, and emotion arise gently and fade just as gently, within the steady pulse of the living brain. Within the layered structure of the brain, communication unfolds through networks that are both stable and continuously adapting. Billions of neurons extend delicate branches, forming pathways shaped by experience and repetition. Yet no pathway is permanent. Connections strengthen when used often and soften when activity fades. This adaptive capacity is known as neuroplasticity, a gradual reshaping of neural architecture across time. Learning does not simply add information, it alters structure. Synapses adjust their sensitivity. Electrical signals move more efficiently along frequently activated routes, while unused circuits gently reduce in influence. Even ordinary experiences leave subtle traces. Repeated thoughts reinforce specific patterns. Repeated behaviors refine motor coordination. Repeated emotional states strengthen associated neural loops. The brain slowly reflects lived rhythm, shaped more by consistency than intensity. Sleep contributes quietly to this refinement. During deeper stages of rest, neural firing becomes more synchronized. Some connections are stabilized, others are lightly reduced, preserving important information while preventing overload. This nightly recalibration supports clarity and balance. Memory is distributed rather than stored in a single location. The hippocampus coordinates early encoding, linking fragments of sensation into coherent form. Over time, elements of experience integrate into wider cortical networks, becoming less dependent on their original pathway, more embedded within long-term structure. Recalling a memory reactivates portions of these networks, yet each recall slightly reshapes the pattern. Memory remains dynamic, reconstructed gently within present context, not fixed, but adaptive. Perception also depends on prediction. The brain anticipates incoming sensory signals, comparing them with internal models built from past experience. This predictive process conserves energy, allowing rapid interpretation without examining every detail. Emotion arises within this coordinated framework. Deeper structures signal relevance, while higher regions add context. Physiological responses follow. Heart rhythm shifts, breathing adjusts, yet regulation soon begins, restoring equilibrium gradually. Attention directs which circuits become dominant. Focused states narrow activation. Diffused states allow broader integration. This natural shifting prevents cognitive strain, maintaining flexibility across time. Viewed in this way, psychology becomes the study of living circuitry, electrical and chemical signaling unfolding in structured rhythm, shaped by repetition, refined by rest, adaptive by design. And as external stimulation decreases, synchronized patterns lengthen, activity softens, the architecture of the mind continuing its subtle adjustment, preparing gently for deeper internal stillness. Across the surface of the brain, billions of neurons communicate through coordinated timing. Not all signals fire at once. Instead, activity organizes itself into patterns of oscillation, gentle waves rising and falling across different regions, each frequency associated with particular states of awareness. During alert concentration, faster beta rhythms tend to dominate, supporting focused analysis and problem-solving. Yet these faster patterns require energy and cannot sustain indefinitely. The brain naturally alternates between intensity and restoration, shifting into slower alpha rhythms when attention softens. Alpha activity often appears when the eyes are closed, when external stimulation decreases, when the mind turns inward. These waves reflect coordinated networks settling into balance, neither asleep nor fully alert, but poised between activity and calm. Deeper still, theta rhythms emerge, commonly observed during light sleep and moments of creative drift. Theta oscillations support memory integration and emotional processing, allowing fragments of experience to connect in subtle ways, forming associations that feel intuitive rather than deliberate. Even the experience of time is shaped by neural coordination. The brain constructs continuity from discrete events, stitching together milliseconds of sensation into a seamless flow. Without this integration, perception would fragment. Yet through synchronized firing, moments blend into coherence. Decision-making also arises from layered interaction. Impulses from emotional centers travel rapidly, while slower cortical evaluation adds context. The sensation of choice often feels immediate, yet it reflects multiple systems working together, integrating prediction, memory, and potential outcome. Attention filters incoming information continuously. Only a fraction of sensory input reaches conscious awareness. The rest is processed quietly, guiding posture, adjusting breathing, preparing movement. The mind manages complexity by narrowing focus, conserving resources for what appears most relevant. Habits form through repetition of coordinated neural loops. Once established, these loops require less conscious oversight, allowing the brain to automate behavior, freeing cognitive capacity for novel tasks. This efficiency supports adaptation without constant effort. Stress alters neural dynamics as well. Heightened arousal increases vigilance, amplifying certain pathways. Yet prolonged activation can reduce flexibility, which is why cycles of rest become essential. Restoration allows circuits to recalibrate, returning to balanced baseline patterns. Throughout all of this, the brain remains a physical system governed by biological law, electrical gradients, chemical exchanges, energy conservation. Beneath abstract concepts like personality or identity, there are measurable signals flowing across tissue, structured yet dynamic. As awareness lingers on these processes, psychology becomes less mysterious and more architectural. A study of networks in motion, oscillations aligning and separating, energy flowing in patterns that support perception and meaning. And gradually, as external demands fade, faster rhythms soften, slower waves extend. The mind shifts naturally toward quieter coordination, where thoughts lengthen, sensations dim slightly, and internal patterns move toward the steady cadence of rest. Beneath conscious awareness, vast systems operate without interruption, regulating heartbeat, breathing rhythm, digestion, temperature balance. These autonomic processes are guided by neural circuits that function quietly, requiring no deliberate control, yet maintaining internal stability across changing conditions. The autonomic nervous system itself balances between two complementary modes, one associated with alert readiness, the other with restoration and repair. Neither state is permanent. the body shifts fluidly between activation and recovery, maintaining equilibrium through subtle adjustment. When stimulation decreases, restorative pathways gradually become more active. Heart rate slows slightly. Breathing deepens. Muscles release stored tension. These changes are not commanded consciously. They unfold through biological signaling shaped by evolution and adaptation. The vagus nerve plays a central role in this regulation, extending from the brainstem through the body, influencing heart rhythm, digestion, and calm response. Increased vagal activity is associated with relaxation and social safety, supporting states of ease rather than vigilance. Psychological experience is deeply intertwined with bodily feedback. Sensations from the heart, lungs, and muscles continuously inform the brain, shaping perception of emotion and safety. The boundary between mind and body becomes less distinct when viewed through this lens. Even thoughts influence physiology. Patterns of interpretation can activate stress pathways or support calm integration. Cognitive appraisal interacts with hormonal systems, altering levels of cortisol and other signaling molecules. These shifts ripple through circulation and neural activity. Yet the system remains adaptable. Repeated exposure to safety signals strengthens calming pathways, reinforcing neural circuits associated with regulation. Over time, the brain becomes more efficient at returning to balance after disturbance. Memory consolidation during quiet rest further supports this recalibration. Emotional experiences are integrated. Intensity softens. Associations reorganize. Sleep allows the brain to archive information without preserving excessive arousal, maintaining stability across days and years. Circadian rhythms coordinate these processes across 24 hours. Light exposure influences hormonal release. Core temperature fluctuates predictably. Neural alertness rises and falls in cycles. The mind follows these biological patterns, aligning cognition with environmental change. As evening deepens, stimulation naturally reduces. Sensory input diminishes. The nervous system gradually shifts toward slower activation. Synchronized oscillations become more prominent. Mental pace decreases without force. Psychology, when viewed from this perspective, is inseparable from physiology. Cognition rests upon neural tissue. Emotion arises from biological coordination. Thought and body form a continuous feedback loop, adjusting in response to internal and external cues. And as the environment grows quieter, the systems responsible for vigilance loosen their hold. Restorative pathways strengthen gently. Rhythms lengthen. Signals soften, guiding awareness toward a steadier internal tempo, where the architecture of mind and body begins to settle into harmonious alignment. The experience of awareness often feels continuous, as if there is a single observer behind every thought. Yet neuroscience suggests something more layered. Consciousness emerges from coordination across multiple regions, integrating sensation, memory, language, and emotion into a unified flow. No single structure contains the mind. Rather, networks synchronize briefly, then reorganize, forming shifting coalitions of activity. At one moment, attention rests on sound. At another, on internal imagery. These transitions occur seamlessly, giving the impression of a stable center. The sense of self develops gradually across early life, shaped by interaction, reflection, and memory integration. Repeated patterns of experience form narratives, and those narratives become identity. Yet even identity remains flexible, adapting as circumstances change. Inner dialogue arises from language networks interacting with emotional and predictive systems. Thoughts often appear spontaneously, not always chosen deliberately. They surface from underlying processes evaluating memory and possibility. The brain simulates outcomes continuously, rehearsing scenarios quietly. Imagination shares pathways with memory. Recalling the past and envisioning the future activate overlapping circuits. The mind reassembles fragments of stored information, combining them into new sequences. Creativity emerges from recombination rather than invention from nothing. Much of this activity unfolds beneath conscious detection. Background networks remain active even when focus narrows, supporting reflection, meaning-making, and integration. When external tasks decrease, these internal systems become more prominent, allowing gentle wandering of thought. Psychologists often describe the default mode network as active during rest. This network participates in self-referential processing, autobiographical memory, and subtle planning. It does not represent distraction, but rather internal organization, maintaining coherence of identity across time. When attention relaxes further, thought streams slow, associations lengthen, transitions between ideas soften. Neural oscillations align more closely, preparing conditions that resemble early stages of sleep. Consciousness gradually loosens its grip on structured narrative. Even silence within the mind is not absolute. There are always faint patterns of activity, subtle background rhythms sustaining life and awareness. Yet these rhythms can become quieter, more diffuse, less defined. From this perspective, psychology becomes a study of flow rather than fixation. Networks connecting and releasing, identity forming and reforming, thoughts emerging and dissolving without permanence. And as awareness observes this movement, the need to hold on to any single thought diminishes. The architecture of mind continues its quiet coordination, while perception grows softer, slower, more spacious, drifting gently toward deeper internal stillness. Emotion often feels immediate, rising quickly, coloring perception without warning. Yet beneath that immediacy lies coordinated neural activity shaped by biology and experience. Signals travel from sensory regions toward deeper structures that evaluate significance, determining whether something is neutral, rewarding, or threatening. The amygdala participates in rapid appraisal, scanning for relevance, while surrounding networks provide context, drawing upon memory to interpret meaning. This interaction allows emotion to respond swiftly, yet remain adaptable through learning. Physiological changes accompany these shifts. Heart rhythm adjusts, breathing pattern alters, muscles subtly engage or release. Hormones circulate through bloodstream, preparing the body for response. Emotion is not separate from the physical self. It is expressed through measurable change. Yet emotional intensity rarely remains fixed. After activation, regulatory systems begin gradual recalibration. Frontal cortical regions contribute perspective, integrating experience into broader narrative, reducing amplitude of arousal over time. Resilience develops when these regulatory pathways strengthen through repetition. Balanced exposure to challenge, followed by recovery, refines the system, allowing activation without prolonged imbalance. The nervous system becomes more efficient at returning to baseline. Compassion and social connection activate additional networks. Oxytocin release, parasympathetic engagement, coordinated neural patterns associated with safety and bonding. These processes soften vigilance, promoting stability within interpersonal environments. Even subtle facial expressions feed back into emotional state. Small muscular shifts send signals back to the brain, influencing internal tone. Body and mind operate as reciprocal systems, continuously informing one another. Memory shapes emotion as well. Past associations can heighten sensitivity or dampen response. Yet each new experience slightly adjusts those patterns, updating expectations, refining predictive models. Emotion becomes less rigid through integration. During states of calm attention, emotional signals diminish in intensity. Neural oscillations stabilize. Heart variability increases gently, indicating flexible regulation. This variability reflects adaptability rather than fragility, the system moving fluidly rather than remaining fixed. Across all these processes, emotion emerges not as chaos, but as coordinated signaling designed to maintain survival, connection, and meaning. When viewed through this lens, emotional experience becomes structured, dynamic, yet understandable. As evening deepens and external demands lessen, activation pathways gradually quiet, signals slow, hormonal levels stabilize, regulatory networks maintain gentle balance. The body eases into restorative rhythm. And within that softened rhythm, emotional tone lightens, mental space widens, physiological systems align more smoothly, allowing awareness to settle, unhurried, into quieter layers of the mind, where stability replaces urgency and internal movement becomes slow and steady. As wakefulness gradually loosens, the brain does not switch off abruptly. It transitions, moving through measurable stages defined by shifting electrical patterns. Consciousness fades in layers rather than disappearing all at once. In early relaxation, alpha rhythms become more prominent, gentle oscillations associated with closed eyes and reduced external focus. These waves reflect coordinated activity across cortical regions, signaling a decrease in sensory processing, yet not complete disengagement. Soon, theta patterns begin to emerge, slower and more diffuse, commonly observed during light sleep and transitional states. During this phase, thoughts may drift without structure, fragments of imagery, faint memories, brief abstract impressions appearing and dissolving quietly. This transition is supported by chemical shifts as well. Neurotransmitters associated with alertness gradually reduce in activity, while others promoting rest increase in influence. The balance between stimulation and inhibition changes slowly, guiding neural circuits toward synchronization. The thalamus, a central relay structure, begins filtering sensory input more selectively. Fewer external signals reach higher cortical regions. Awareness turns inward. Internal processing becomes more dominant than environmental monitoring. Breathing deepens subtly. Heart rhythm steadies. Muscle tone decreases. These physiological adjustments mirror neural slowing, mind and body shifting together into coordinated rest. Even the sense of time begins to soften. Moments feel less segmented, less structured. Without strong cognitive markers, perception stretches gently, allowing experience to flow without sharp boundaries. During deeper stages, slow wave activity emerges. Broad, synchronized oscillations traveling across large cortical areas. These waves support physical restoration, memory consolidation, and metabolic regulation. The brain engages in maintenance, while conscious narrative fades further. Yet even in these deeper phases, activity never fully stops. Networks continue their rhythmic coordination, sustaining life, preserving memory, regulating internal balance. Psychology recognizes this gradual descent into sleep as a natural oscillation between engagement and restoration, a biological rhythm refined through evolution, aligning neural timing with cycles of light and darkness. As the mind approaches these slower frequencies, thought fragments dissolve more quickly. Attention no longer holds them in place. Internal space expands, less defined, less structured. And within this expanding quiet, neural rhythms lengthen. Synchronization increases. Awareness softens at its edges, preparing gently for deeper rest, where cognition yields to steady biological rhythm, and the architecture of the mind continues its silent, restorative coordination. As deeper sleep approaches, neural activity shifts into broad, synchronized waves that move slowly across the cortex. These slow oscillations coordinate large populations of neurons, rising and falling in gentle cycles, supporting restoration at both cellular and systemic levels. During this stage, metabolic demand decreases. Energy consumption becomes more efficient. The brain begins subtle housekeeping processes, clearing metabolic byproducts that accumulate during waking hours. Circulation patterns adjust quietly, sustaining long-term neural health. Memory consolidation continues in layered coordination. Fragments encoded earlier are replayed in compressed form, transferring patterns from temporary storage toward distributed cortical networks. Experiences integrate without conscious effort. Emotional intensity softens. Associations reorganize gently. Hormonal regulation aligns with these shifts. Growth hormone increases, supporting tissue repair and immune function. cortisol levels decline, reducing physiological arousal. The body and brain synchronize within the same restorative rhythm. Muscle tone remains low, breathing steady. Heart variability increases in smooth cycles, reflecting adaptive flexibility rather than strain. Autonomic balance favors recovery pathways, maintaining internal stability throughout the night. Dreaming may arise as neural circuits activate in partial patterns, imagery emerging from memory fragments and emotional traces. Yet even dream states follow structure, defined by measurable electrical signatures and predictable progression through sleep cycles. Across the night, these cycles repeat, alternating between lighter and deeper stages, each phase serving distinct regulatory roles, together forming a coordinated architecture of rest shaped by circadian timing and environmental cues. Psychology views this progression not as absence of activity, but as transformation of function. Waking cognition yields to restoration. Analytic thought gives way to rhythmic synchronization. The brain shifts from outward engagement to inward maintenance. Within these slower patterns, the boundaries of narrative identity loosen further. Thoughts no longer organize into linear sequence. Perception dissolves into softer impressions. Internal space becomes diffuse, expansive, less defined. And as these rhythms lengthen, consciousness recedes toward quieter layers, mental motion easing into steady cadence, where integration replaces analysis, and the living architecture of the mind continues its silent, restorative work, moving gently through the deeper cycles of sleep. Beneath conscious awareness, vast patterns of behavior unfold automatically. Habits form through repetition. Neural circuits strengthening each time an action is repeated under similar conditions. Eventually, the sequence requires little deliberate attention, unfolding with minimal cognitive effort. This efficiency conserves energy. The brain favors automation whenever possible. Frequently repeated behaviors become encoded in subcortical structures, allowing higher cortical regions to disengage from constant supervision. Attention becomes available for novelty rather than routine. Even emotional responses can follow habitual pathways. Past associations influence present interpretation, shaping reaction speed and intensity. Yet these pathways remain adaptable. Gradual exposure to new patterns modifies expectation, recalibrating predictive systems over time. Decision-making often begins before conscious awareness registers it. Subtle neural signals accumulate. Competing possibilities wade silently across distributed networks. By the time awareness perceives choice, underlying processes have already integrated probability, memory, and context. The feeling of intention emerges from coordinated activation. Motor planning areas align with self-referential networks, creating the experience of agency. Yet this agency rests upon layered interaction rather than singular command. Cognition functions through collaboration. Language itself operates within structured loops. Internal dialogue activates auditory and motor regions lightly, simulating speech without outward expression. These silent articulations help organize thought, shaping abstract concepts into coherent sequence. When stimulation decreases, habitual cognitive loops gradually slow. Without new input, repetition softens. Internal narration becomes less defined. Neural oscillations shift toward broader synchronization, allowing mental space to expand beyond structured sequence. Psychology describes this as a transition from active executive control toward diffuse network dominance, where self-referential processing and memory integration take precedence, not as distraction, but as natural background organization. Over time, repeated patterns of calm attention reshape these loops, reinforcing circuits associated with stability rather than urgency. The brain gradually favors efficiency without tension, activation without overload. Throughout this process, the system remains adaptive, flexible rather than fixed. Habits can evolve. Associations can soften. Neural coordination can reorganize through consistent exposure to slower rhythms. As awareness continues to settle, automated patterns grow quieter. Internal dialogue reduces in intensity. Signals disperse across wider networks rather than concentrating sharply. Cognition transitions from structured problem-solving to gentle background integration. And within that softer coordination, the mind becomes less occupied by repetition, more aligned with steady biological cadence, where habit yields to rhythm and thought drifts quietly, supported by the stable architecture beneath conscious effort. The distinction between thought and sensation becomes less defined. Internal dialogue fades into fragments. Images appear briefly, then dissolve without continuation. Neural coordination shifts away from structured narrative toward diffuse integration. In waking life, the prefrontal cortex supports planning, evaluation, sequencing. Yet as fatigue increases, its dominance gently decreases. Control becomes less rigid. Associations form more freely. Mental movement becomes fluid rather than directed. This loosening is not dysfunction. It is transition. Executive systems yield to slower oscillatory patterns, allowing deeper restorative networks to assume prominence. Consciousness thins gradually, layer by layer. The boundary between internal and external awareness becomes permeable. Sensory input reduces in clarity. Background sounds lose sharpness. Internal imagery gains subtle presence. Neither fully dream nor fully waking, but an intermediate field of quiet processing. Neural synchronization expands across broader regions. Large-scale oscillations coordinate distant cortical areas, facilitating integration rather than analysis. Information gathered during the day settles into stable networks. Connections refined through repetition remain, while weaker traces fade. Metabolic activity continues adjusting. Glucose utilization declines. Oxygen consumption becomes more efficient. Circulation sustains rhythmic balance. The brain enters a state optimized not for outward performance, but for inward recalibration. Time perception shifts further. Without strong attentional anchors, seconds feel extended. Transitions blur. Experience becomes less segmented, more continuous, sustained by steady oscillatory rhythm. Psychology recognizes this as a natural decoupling from executive dominance, a reduction in top-down control, replaced by bottom-up coordination, deeper structures guiding rhythm, higher regions resting from constant evaluation. Even the sense of effort diminishes. Thoughts require less engagement. Attention no longer fixes on content. Cognitive momentum slows without resistance. The system conserves energy by releasing active monitoring. Throughout this descent, neural activity remains structured, never chaotic. Slow waves maintain organization, ensuring stability within transition. Beneath fading awareness, the biological framework remains precise. And as mental structure continues to dissolve into softer oscillation, awareness rests lightly upon underlying rhythm. Perception thins, narrative quiets, and the living circuitry of the brain sustains its steady, unhurried movement, guiding consciousness gently toward deeper stillness. As deeper stillness unfolds, large-scale neural rhythms dominate the landscape of the mind. Slow oscillations rise and fall in broad, synchronized waves, coordinating distant cortical regions in unified timing. Activity becomes less fragmented, more cohesive, guided by steady biological cadence. The cortex alternates between brief moments of activity and quiet pauses. Neurons firing together, then resting together. These cycles create a pattern of restoration, allowing cellular processes to rebalance ion concentrations, replenish energy stores, and maintain structural integrity. During these phases, conscious narrative no longer organizes experience. There is no need for evaluation or planning. Higher order processing subsides into background coordination. Deeper structures maintain essential regulation, ensuring continuity of breathing, circulation, and metabolic rhythm. Communication between the hippocampus and cortex continues in compressed bursts, traces of recent experience replayed in subtle sequences, strengthening long-term integration. Emotional charge gradually diminishes, intensity smoothing into stable memory. Autonomic systems operate in balanced harmony. Parasympathetic influence remains dominant. Heart rate variability reflects adaptability. Blood pressure stabilizes. Muscular tension remains low. The body sustains internal equilibrium without conscious direction. Dream imagery may arise intermittently, abstract forms shaped by memory fragments and sensory echoes. Yet even these patterns remain governed by predictable neural signatures. The sleeping brain follows architecture rather than randomness. Circadian timing coordinates the depth and duration of these cycles. Internal biological clocks maintain rhythmic precision. Hormonal patterns fluctuate predictably across the night, aligning restoration with environmental light cycles beyond awareness. Psychology interprets these processes as essential maintenance of cognitive stability. Without adequate synchronization, attention fragments, emotional regulation weakens, memory integration falters. Yet through repeated nightly cycles, resilience is preserved. Within this slower state, perception becomes diffuse. Boundaries soften completely. The sense of self no longer asserts structure. Identity dissolves into biological rhythm, sustained by electrical pulses that require no narrative to function. Energy use declines further. Neural networks operate efficiently within reduced demand. Subtle oscillations maintain coherence. Life continues through steady patterned exchange, not through deliberate intention. And as these broad waves continue rising and falling, awareness settles deeper into the background of physiology, no longer guiding, no longer analyzing, simply resting within the quiet architecture of synchronized neural motion, sustained by the gentle cadence of sleep. In the deepest phases of sleep, neural activity reaches its slowest, coordinated rhythm. Broad waves travel across the cortex in measured intervals, rising gradually, falling gently, creating expansive fields of synchronized silence between pulses. These pauses are not absence, but restoration. During these cycles, communication between distant regions becomes highly ordered. Large populations of neurons enter shared timing, conserving energy while preserving structural coherence. The brain is not idle. It is recalibrating at foundational levels. Cellular repair mechanisms become more active. Proteins are synthesized. Microscopic damage accumulated during wakefulness is corrected. Immune signaling adjusts quietly. Metabolic waste continues to clear through regulated circulation, supporting long-term neural health. Hormonal patterns follow predictable night rhythms. Growth-related processes peak. Stress-related signals remain low. Internal chemistry aligns with reduced environmental demand, ensuring that restoration unfolds without interruption. Breathing becomes steady and efficient. Heart rhythm maintains smooth variability. Muscular systems remain relaxed. The entire organism operates in coordinated equilibrium, sustained by autonomic regulation rather than conscious oversight. Memory traces stabilize within distributed cortical networks. Information encoded during waking hours integrates without conscious rehearsal. Emotional intensity associated with recent experiences softens further, preserving learning while reducing arousal. The architecture of the brain remains intact through these oscillations. Slow waves alternate with brief periods of lighter activity, maintaining balance between restoration and integration. Sleep cycles progress in structured sequence, guided by internal biological clocks. Psychology recognizes this depth as essential for cognitive clarity, sustained attention, emotional regulation, and resilience. Without these slow, synchronized patterns, neural networks lose efficiency. Yet with consistent cycles, stability is reinforced. At this level, awareness no longer observes. Narrative does not form. Perception does not organize. Yet life continues through ordered electrical exchange, sustained by gradients of ions, regulated by cellular membranes, precise and continuous. The mind, once filled with layered thought and interpretation, now rests upon its biological foundation: structure without storyline, rhythm without reflection, coordination without effort. And within this profound synchronization, neural motion remains steady, rising and falling in expansive cycles, maintaining the living framework of cognition, quietly preserving balance as the architecture of the brain continues its silent, restorative work. Across the full span of the night, these cycles of restoration repeat with quiet precision, rising from lighter stages, descending into deeper synchronization, then gradually returning upward again, each sequence following an internal timing that requires no conscious direction. The brain does not remain fixed in one depth. It moves rhythmically, alternating between phases of slow wave dominance and intervals of dream-associated activity. This alternation preserves flexibility, ensuring that restoration and integration occur in balanced proportion. During dream phases, neural activity becomes more variable, yet remains structured. Visual and emotional networks activate in patterned sequences, while motor output remains inhibited, protecting physical stillness. The mind generates imagery, though the body rests undisturbed. Even within dreams, the underlying architecture of the brain sustains coherence. Oscillatory timing coordinates distributed regions, preventing fragmentation, ensuring that internal simulation unfolds within stable biological boundaries. As cycles progress, slow wave depth may gradually shorten toward morning, preparing the nervous system for re-emergence into wakefulness. Hormonal signals adjust accordingly. Cortisol levels begin a slow rise, aligning physiology with approaching daylight. Throughout this entire progression, the organism remains in dynamic equilibrium. Temperature regulation continues. Cardiovascular systems adapt subtly. Metabolic processes maintain steady balance. The sleeping state is not absence, but controlled transformation. Psychology interprets this nightly rhythm as fundamental to mental resilience. Without repetition of these structured cycles, attention weakens, mood becomes unstable, cognitive clarity declines. Yet when sleep follows natural architecture, stability strengthens quietly. The mind, once active with layered interpretation, has now settled fully into biological cadence. Identity, memory, and narrative resting upon neural timing rather than conscious assembly. The sense of self temporarily suspended, supported by underlying circuitry alone. In this depth, there is no effort, no evaluation, only coordinated pulses rising and falling through living tissue. Synchronized electrical gradients sustaining continuity of life without reflection. And as the night continues its slow passage, these oscillations persist in steady rhythm, guiding the brain through predictable transitions, preserving integration, maintaining balance, preparing gently for eventual return to wakefulness, while remaining fully immersed in the quiet, restorative architecture of sleep. As the final cycles of the night unfold, the architecture of sleep continues its measured progression. Slow oscillations gradually give way to lighter patterns, synchronized waves becoming less expansive. cortical regions reactivating in gentle sequence, preparing the nervous system for renewed awareness. The transition toward waking does not occur abruptly. It is layered, gradual. Chemical signals shift in subtle increments. Neurotransmitters associated with alertness begin to increase, while those dominant in deep sleep slowly recede. The balance recalibrates without disturbance. Sensory gateways reopen progressively. The thalamus reduces its filtering threshold. Faint external signals begin reaching higher cortical regions. Background sounds register lightly. Ambient light influences hormonal timing. The organism aligns itself with the external environment once again. Yet even in this ascent, stability remains intact. Heart rhythm adjusts smoothly. Breathing patterns shift without strain. Muscle tone restores gradually. Coordination returns in measured increments. Nothing sudden, only quiet recalibration. Memory consolidation completed during deeper phases now supports coherent cognition. Experiences integrated through the night become accessible. Emotional intensity tempered. Neural networks strengthened through synchronized repetition. Psychology understands this awakening process as continuation of structured rhythm, not interruption. Sleep and wakefulness form a continuous cycle rather than separate states, each phase preparing the other in ongoing coordination. The mind, which had dissolved into pure biological cadence, begins reconstructing narrative, identity reforming through reactivation of distributed networks. Language centers regain prominence. Attention sharpens. Perception narrows from diffuse field into focused awareness. Still, the foundation remains the same. Electrical pulses, chemical gradients, oscillatory timing. Life sustained by structured exchange beneath all conscious experience. Across 24 hours, this oscillation between activation and restoration repeats reliably, shaped by circadian biology, influenced by environment, refined by habit, yet governed by stable physiological law. Psychology, at its core, becomes the study of this rhythm, the movement between thought and silence, between evaluation and integration, between effort and release, a continuous flow guided by neural coordination rather than will alone. And as awareness eventually returns with daylight, it rests upon the stability built through these cycles. Clarity emerging from restoration, attention supported by synchronized renewal, identity reconstructed from underlying structure. Yet beneath all waking activity, the same architecture persists, ready to soften again when evening arrives, continuing the quiet oscillation of mind and body, rising and falling in steady, patient, biological rhythm. Between the fading depth of night and the quiet return of awareness, there exists a subtle threshold, not fully asleep, not fully awake. A delicate space where neural rhythms shift gradually, without disruption. In this transitional field, large, slow waves begin to soften, yet faster patterns have not fully emerged. Synchronization loosens slightly, though coherence remains intact. The brain adjusts in increments, recalibrating timing without urgency. Chemical balances continue their steady transformation. Neurotransmitters associated with alertness increase slowly, while restorative signals gently decline. No sudden reversal, only measured transition guided by internal clocks. Sensory pathways begin to reopen in subtle sequence. Faint external cues register lightly. Ambient temperature, distant sound, shifting light behind closed eyelids. Yet awareness does not grasp them fully. They remain distant impressions within softened cognition. Identity has not yet fully reconstructed. Narrative remains diffuse. Memory fragments lie quiet. The sense of self suspended lightly between biological rhythm and emerging perception. Autonomic systems maintain equilibrium throughout this shift. Heart rhythm steady, breathing smooth. Muscular tone gradually restoring. Physiology aligning seamlessly with changing neural timing. Psychology recognizes this threshold as integration rather than interruption. The continuity of mind sustained through oscillatory balance. No sharp boundary separates sleep from wakefulness. Only gradual transformation of dominant patterns. In this in-between state, thought is minimal, structure reduced, awareness floating gently upon coordinated pulses, sustained by steady electrical gradients beneath conscious recognition. The architecture of the brain remains consistent, only its emphasis shifts. Restoration yielding slowly to readiness, without haste, without disturbance. And within this delicate transition, the living system maintains calm precision, preparing for renewed awareness, yet still held within the quiet cadence of night, where rhythm guides every adjustment, and nothing moves faster than it needs to. And now, as the full rhythm of the mind has unfolded, from active thought to quiet transition to deep, synchronized restoration, the architecture of psychology feels less abstract and more like a steady biological cadence. The mind is not a single voice, nor a fixed center of control. It is coordination, timing, patterned exchange across living tissue. Billions of neurons rising and falling in structured harmony, forming perception, memory, identity, and then gently releasing them into silence. Throughout waking hours, networks assemble narratives, construct meaning, evaluate experience. Yet beneath all interpretation lies measurable rhythm. Electrical pulses traveling across synapses, chemical gradients shifting in microscopic precision, sustaining cognition without effort. When stimulation fades, those same systems soften. Faster oscillations yield to slower waves. Attention dissolves into diffuse awareness. Structured language recedes, leaving only synchronized patterns maintaining life quietly in the background. Sleep is not escape, but recalibration, not absence, but transformation. The brain reorganizes itself in cycles refined through evolution, preserving memory, balancing emotion, restoring cellular integrity, all without conscious direction. Even identity, which feels continuous and solid, depends upon this nightly renewal. Without restoration, narrative coherence weakens, yet with steady rhythm, clarity returns. Thought rebuilds upon stable foundation. Psychology becomes less about complexity and more about structure, less about mystery and more about timing. The mind moves through predictable oscillations: activation, integration, restoration, and return. And now, in this quiet moment, there is no need for analysis, no requirement for effort. The architecture of the brain continues its gentle coordination beneath awareness. Heart steady, breath measured, neural pulses synchronized in calm repetition. The same living circuitry that once generated layered thought now sustains quiet equilibrium, rising and falling in slow cadence, guiding the organism toward deeper rest. Across the night, these rhythms will continue, structured, balanced, precise, maintaining coherence without narrative, preserving stability without reflection. And as awareness softens fully into that steady biological flow, thought loosens its form, perception thins, internal space widens, until only the quiet pulse of living rhythm remains. The mind rests upon its foundation, sustained by synchronized motion, carried gently through cycles of restoration, steady, ordered, and profoundly calm. Sleep well.